Okay, right. Hi everyone. This is the guest speaker, and it's Tania Stafford, and I'm really excited. Well, not excited. I'm pleased, actually, is the right word, that Tanya's given up her time and able to share her experience with us, because it is Mental Health Month, and so we are going to talk about Tanya's mental health and what she's been through. And I know she's a big believer, like me, that if we share, we can help others. So I do feel quite honoured that she is prepared to share her story. So I'm just going to give you a bit of background. From my side anyway, I've known Tanya for about 15 years. And I think when I first met her, I saw this woman that was together, independent, had a good job. She has a really interesting life. She travelled a lot, and she had a good career, or she's had quite interesting different careers. And she just seemed, she had a plan for her future. She knew where she was going, and we hit it off quite from the beginning. But then about 10 years ago, I remember looking for you, actually, because you hadn't turned up to something that you were meant to be at, to find out that you'd been taken into hospital. So, and had no idea what was going on, really. And we were reasonably good friends, weren't we, at that time?
Very much so, yeah.
So it was a bit of a shock to hear what had happened. So are you happy to share with us today what happened that day? It was about 10 years ago, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. October 2010. And I had made a very serious suicide attempt. And I survived, really, because it wasn't my time not to. I survived because my cat woke me up. There was absolutely no reason that I would survive. And initially, when I was hospitalized to stabilize my physical health, I was angry, really angry, because I did not have a plan B. I was not supposed to have to figure this out. And I should say, Haley, not even I knew that was going to happen. I got up that morning. I had been really working with my psychiatrist to sort out depression. He was trying very hard with my medication to stabilize me. Wasn't going that well, and I knew that. But I didn't make a plan. I didn't have a plan. But that morning, I just cut my arm quite severely, and well, according to the doctor, should have died.
Wow.
So yeah, it wasn't something I could have even vocalized to anybody ahead of time. I didn't.
No, because there wasn't massive signs or anything, was there? It just wasn't. I mean, not externally for us, we didn't. I mean, I knew there was some ups and downs, and we all have ups and downs, and you change stuff and things like that. But we all know, don't we, that it doesn't come it's not just one day. It is a build up, and as much as the signs weren't overly visible for you or anyone else at the time, but I suppose if you're looking back now, can you see where that all now comes from?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Everyone, my own mother did complete suicide in 1976, and that was her fourth serious attempt. And I was at that time 18. Ironically, in 2010, I was the same age as my mother when she died.
Right.
So as you do the work, and that's one of the important things I'd like people to think of with depressive illness, is you do the work. And in doing so, you discover so much about yourself. It is an opportunity, not just a horrible thing to go through. And don't get me wrong, when you're in the midst of serious depressive illness, which I've had a few episodes of, as I am diagnosed as chronic, which basically means it comes back. And at those times, everything I value is removed. I lose my ability to sleep. And as Haley knows, I love to nap. I lose my ability to eat. That's less important to me. I'm not terribly food motivated, although it was a Mexican meal at your house. I missed, Haley.
I know.
Yeah. I lose my ability to think. And for me, that is terrible. But I would be able to manage it if I could still read, but I can't even read. I lose that. And I lose my ability, therefore, to communicate with people. And so the very, very worst of depressive illness takes from you the things that you hold dear.
Yeah. Your frontal lobe shuts down, doesn't it? The chemicals in the brain and everything, and the frontal lobe, which is our action part, shuts down completely, and it actually starts in minor stress and anxiety and then depression. So that's why none of that works. Yep. But that's what's debilitating, isn't it? Because none of that's working.
And especially because, thank you for the kind words you said about when you first met me, but I certainly was regarded as a person who got things done. I was regarded as pretty astonishing given my mum's history. Yeah. I had got on with life. My father, sadly, and my mother had died in 76. My father died in 81. And so, and I am an only child. So I just got on with life. My parents had provided me the opportunity to be well educated. And like you say, I worked as an educator, and then due to philosophical changes in the Bermuda government education system, I left. And I'm good at that. I leave things. And then I moved on to another career in the planning department, and then back to education, where I ran the secondary department of a very good school. But all of those things require enormous mental output.
Yeah.
And I think what happens with people is you just get used to giving, and you forget. It's almost like it's chips in a bank. And if you take all of those chips out of your bank by being good at your job, being a good parent, I'm not, but I'm not a parent, but being all the things that the world tells you you should be, all of a sudden, your bank is empty.
Yeah.
And
you as a parent to so many children in Bermuda, you were, working in the school, a lot of children knew you, and then young adults knew you, and, as they grew and everything. And then you're always in the community. You're a big part of the community wherever you live, and you're always helping. So it doesn't matter if you're a parent or not, you were giving constantly as well, wasn't you?
Mm-hmm. It was interesting, Haley, as well, because when I realized, okay, you're still alive, you're going to have to figure out what to do. I had previously been given medications, and in the sort of normal Tania way, I was good at it and I fixed it. And the psychiatrist took me off the medications because we were done. Depression was over. And it wasn't. And, hindsight, never should have gone off the meds. And so then when I really began to spiral down so quickly, I mean, it was a period of 6 weeks from firing on all cylinders to waking up in hospital. There just wasn't time for the medications to become effective again. I was talking to my psychiatrists, but I didn't have a connection with that human. He a nice enough individual, but kind of hands out the pills.
Yeah.
And when my recovery became something that I decided to work with, the best thing probably that anybody recommended was find someone you like who's not your friend or your colleague or family. Probably a professional will be best, but find someone you like to talk to.
Yeah.
And I can't emphasize enough for people the combination of medication and talk therapy and life therapy, changing up what you do, why you do it. Ask yourself, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
You know, we said last night, everyone, in preparation, Haley and I did have a conversation, and the question I said to her is, what would you like your clients to get out of our chat today?
Yeah.
Because then I kind of know where we can go with this. Haley helped treat me actually in my recovery with reflexology and putting a bubble around me. And, you know, I was like, oh yeah, this is interesting.
You could see that look on your face when I was doing it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm also the lady who traveled with Haley to the happiness conference in San Diego. And by day 2 had sufficient happiness to go and buy a red frying pan. But I did return for day 3. But it's very important, I think, to give yourself that permission.
Yeah.
You know, to say, okay, I'm not connecting with this right now, so I don't have to try.
Yeah.
And if I can say anything, I think people who end up in a depressed state, you're well loved, you're usually effective, you're just, if I can use your word, Haley, you're too giving, and you try too hard to please.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, learning to say no can give you that little time to take your breath. And that can stop what might be a minor depressive episode from growing into a major depressive episode.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Because a lot of this, I mean, I know each of them are different, like anxiety, stress, and depression, they're all very different, but they can start from general stresses of every day to stimulate into long-term anxiety, into depression. It can be a gradual effect. So all these things that you're talking about, because you're at one end, you know, you use those things on your everyday, you then helping to prevent and manage, well, not always prevent, but manage it to get into a different one, isn't it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you were sort of saying, like, at first, wasn't it, that you were like, oh, well, I'm going to go back, I'm coming off the tablets. Did you actually think when you first come out that, I know it wasn't, oh, there wasn't plan B, but it's just like, okay, I'll get better and go back to normal life? Did you actually realize it was going to be a life-changing thing, that you really had to look at your life? Or has that been a gradual thing that you've learned through the experience?
I lived probably the most difficult 2 months of my life immediately after attempting suicide. I was safe, completely safe. You usually are. If you've had a go at suicide and for whatever reason it hasn't been successful, you know it's a really difficult thing to do. So you're often rather safe at that point. But I was completely depleted, exhausted. I had to kind of deal with people's thoughts that they thought they were protecting me when they were not. As a young person, I had watched my own mother really, really battle with depression. I think had it been 1976, I probably wouldn't have survived. The medications were blunt. The therapies were paternalistic rather than inclusive. Yeah. They told you what to think rather than said, what do you think? Which is really the question you have to ask.
Yeah.
And so I had really, really well-meaning people who I love very, very dearly saying, you've got to get back to who you used to be. You've got to pick up your career. You've got to. So that was a huge barrier for me. And they were simply trying to be helpful. But frankly, when somebody is in that space, and you may know somebody who is, you may be somebody who is, but the best thing to do for somebody who is at a situation of mental break, and it doesn't matter whether it's depression, whether it's stress, whether it's anxiety, if your mental well-being breaks, you have to sit.
Yeah.
I use the term, Haley reminded me of it last night, where I ride the wave and it takes you into a very deep trough. But if you stay on your surfboard, you come out.
Yeah.
But too many people jumping on your surfboard with you, go sink it.
And everybody wants to fix you, don't they?
Yep.
If you're back to normal, they don't have to worry, and then they feel better.
Yeah, and they're also pretty scared of you.
Yeah, they are scared. They're scared.
You're a pretty scary person because they can't get what you did.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody who either hasn't had first-hand experience with someone who is suicidal or who has been suicidal can get what it is.
Yeah.
Because there's this sort of belief that you're in this control and it's a conscious decision. I think that's a different sort of suicide. I think that's a suicide that's trying to prove a point. But a mental health suicide, a true mental health suicide, you have no clue what's going on.
Yeah.
And you're in a place where your mental capacity is diminished to a point that the normal solution-oriented you can see no way out of this.
Yeah.
And smart people, what do smart people do?
Yeah.
Finish.
Yeah.
You unplug your phone when it annoys you. You turn off the television if you don't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want that to sound glib, but
that's difficult, isn't it? It's like I can't do anymore. I've got to stop, and it's got to stop, isn't it?
And I think the other thing, and I have spoken to other people who have been suicidal, is you have this fear of becoming a burden.
Yes.
Because nothing is working. Your brain's not working. You can't speak to people. You can't eat. They're worried because you're losing weight. They're being really nice and bringing you meatloaf. And you're feeding it to the cat. But the fact is, you can't do anything. And you're like, oh my God, what is this going to go on for forever?
Yeah.
And so the only thing your brain can think is, I'm useless.
Yeah.
So that whole question of, and I've never been a person who at all, and I think you'll attest to that, Hedy, I do not question my self-worth. I know I'm pretty amazing. I was raised by parents, notwithstanding their own issues, who let me know I was a good person and I could do things.
Yeah.
But you still, when the depression takes a hold, other illnesses take a hold, you're trapped.
Yes. I know my attempt wasn't anywhere near yours, and mine was soon after the accident, because no one knew what was wrong with me. They hadn't actually diagnosed a minor head injury with the long-term effects. They didn't even have the studies, the information until 3 years after. Right. So I was in a stage of everyone just telling me I was making it up and I was mad. I had been put into a psychiatric ward without even knowing I was going into one. I was like just being told I was going to the hospital for some tests, and next minute I was in. So I'd come
And
back.
they're so much fun.
They are. And I come out and I couldn't see how I was meant to look after my son at this point, because he
Of
was,
course, Samuel, yeah.
and I'd had him, and that's what knocked me. It made me ill. I couldn't see how I was going to bring him up. They were telling me I was incapable of bringing him up, but they were telling me there was nothing wrong with me. And then a lot of people around me were starting to believe that.
Yep. Yep.
And so I sort of can see what you mean. I just couldn't see a way out. How can I get through this? And that was, you know, my way of thinking, well, this is the easiest way. And I remember sitting there thinking, Samuel will be better without me. Everyone else will be better without me, because they were getting so frustrated with me. It's like, why aren't you getting up? Why can't you go to work? Why aren't you doing this? What, you know, the doctors are saying there's nothing wrong with you. What, you know, that's what I was being told all the time. And by that point, I was like in my early 20s. I think I was about 22, 23. So,
and your reality is, Hayley, you were broken.
Yeah, I was broken.
That's why I purposefully use the term mental break.
Yeah.
Because the combination of the injury and all of the expectations that were placed on you broke you.
Yeah.
And, you know, when something's broken, sometimes the best thing to do is to let it sit a little bit.
Yeah.
And see if it can heal itself. And if it doesn't, then you put the interventions in place. And, you know, this is why I have learned and I do advocate. There's nothing better for a person in an awful place than sitting with them in silence.
Yes.
Because you're there. If they want to talk to you, they can. But if they can't talk, they don't have to. And it's one of the kindest things you can do for somebody.
Yeah.
Is to be there with no expectations, because as we talked about the other night, Hayley, the modern world is really not a place for human beings. It's a place for highly activated robots.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you just look at the amount of drug taking, caffeine drinking, Prozac, you name it, even the gym bunnies who are addicted to their gyms.
Yeah.
All of these are means to cope with your life.
I know.
Well, wouldn't it be better? And this is how I have survived for over 10 years. Wouldn't it be better to look at your life and say, what do I really want?
Yeah.
And to put in place the things that support that goal, rather than the things that people are telling you you have to have. I mean, in my own instance, I learned I didn't actually have to work full time.
Yeah.
I had to simplify my life dramatically to not work full time, but I didn't actually have to work full time.
Yeah.
And that, at the age of 53, was something I never would have dreamed of. But it was a good solution for me. For yourself, I mean, if I may say, you focused all of your attention on Samuel. And for when I first met you, he was little. He was
12,
great, wasn't he? Yeah. When I first met you and Samuel, everything that you were doing in Bermuda, and a lot of your time was focused on the Sea Cadets, the plays, and it was Samuel.
Yeah.
And so hearing you say earlier that people had told you you could not care for him. Well, I'd love them to see a fast action replay of your life with Samuel, because that little person who you were told you couldn't care for has had more care than many, many young people who, and there's been thousands through as an educator that I know. And he's lived a different life because you've permitted it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been on as your guest. Everybody knows who he is. He's a phenomenal young man, but did he follow the traditional academic path? No,
No.
because his mother allowed him not to.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's in Italy right now with the SailGP program. How many of his classmates' parents would have believed Samuel Bennett would be able to do that? Because, you know, you didn't push him very hard, Haley.
I didn't send him to university.
But exactly, you see, and it's really from when you look at it, and it's society's norms from a very, very young age. I mean, these poor little 5-year-olds who are going to flipping ballet classes.
Yeah.
Seriously? You know, couldn't they just play outside with sticks?
Yeah.
And it's all of that, you see. And what I saw, for everybody else, I was the head of secondary of a very good girls' school. And what I saw, and this was in 2000 to 2003, and what I saw at that time was fabulous young girls in a pressure cooker.
Yes.
And, you know, it delights me that many of them are still in contact with me. And when I first chose to speak about my illness, I can't even remember when it was probably 2012 or something like that. And there was an article in the newspaper. So many of those students contacted me and said, my God, you just made it okay to not be okay.
Yeah. And that is the thing, isn't it? I've always said, and I think a lot of them, people who have followed me have heard me say it before, you know, I was grateful I had Samuel 25 years ago, because you didn't have to give birth and run a marathon in the same week.
Mm-hmm.
But now on Facebook, that's what you're meant to be doing, you know, you're meant to be, you know. And I remember, because I was ill, I gave birth and I laid on the sofa thinking, what's just happened? It's wiped me. I've had no sleep. I've had no, you know, thing. And there was pressure then, but it wasn't as bad 25 years ago. And I've watched it get even worse. So you see these young mums and old, you know, all age mums feeling that they should be doing stuff. Women, not just women, men have to be, you know, working, the great dads, the mums have to have a job and be doing this, and then you've got to have the nice house and everything. And it just becomes more and more. And where we're saying and where we've come from, mine from the accident and yours from your mental illness, that when we both stopped and looked at what is it we want, what works for us, do I need the big house or do I keep it simple so then I don't have to work so much and then need that glass of wine at the end of the week or the end of the day because I've been working and doing stuff I don't want, just to have this and just to have that. You know, going out socializing, feeling you should be in that situation is going, this doesn't work for me. I'm going to step back. This is my life. This is how it is. But we then get that balance more, don't we? And we're able to be more authentic with ourselves and figure out. And then when the waves come, isn't it? We can cope with the different waves and accept them, because there's no pressure, there's less pressure, sorry, to be perfect and a certain way.
Well, probably the biggest breakthrough I had was when the word vulnerable, which I had always sort of viewed as not something one would particularly want to be.
Yes.
When that word suddenly became, actually, this is an opportunity.
Yeah.
And my brilliant friend, who was my psychotherapist, and with whom, even though I'm now living in Britain, I'm still in contact. He said, you know, give yourself permission to just slow down. And I know everybody hears that. And everybody thinks they do it. And so you might not rush to do something for 2 or 3 days, but that's kind of not what making a life is about. What I have managed to do is to, and again, as you know, Haley, I love nature. I love the natural world. My first principal interests in university was geography, biology. So all of those things are sacred to me. And so I've been able to sort of look at, if you look at the natural world, nothing happens with immediacy. And yet human beings have been taught to believe that you should get things instantly. Instagram,
Yeah.
Snapshot or whatever it's called, Snapchat.
Yeah.
How can you have a snappy chat? A chat should be a rather lethargic, lingering, enjoyable thing.
Yeah.
And so it's learning to put on the brakes and to take the time that the brakes are on to really allow your mental health to settle itself. And for me, that means that I would say I've had 2 horrific episodes. One, not really very nice episode. And then a few, okay, this is hibernation, which is a term I use, where it's like, okay, everything has to slow down. All right. And because you accept it rather than butt your head against it, it doesn't get as bad.
Yeah. So what is it? So when you're riding those waves and the ups and downs, what do you say? So when you're in your hibernation or your low period, what is your coping tools, and what are the things you tell yourself and that? And then what are the tools you use when you're in your sort of other way, when things are okay?
I really give myself a break. I give myself a lot of slack when I'm not well. And that means doesn't much matter to me if I don't brush my teeth that day, because I will brush my teeth at some point.
Yeah.
I do have to eat something every day. That is something I have to do, but it can be at any point in that 24-hour period. Doesn't much matter when.
Yeah.
I make sure I get outside and I see the sky.
Yeah.
There's something about that suddenly makes your reality become a lot more sensible, because you are this little pinhead and you look at the universe. And so it's like, okay, everything else is spinning around out there. It's still there. I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And I always walk my dog, because it's not her fault that I'm depressed. And so those are basically the only things I do when I'm not good. Now, when I am feeling well, what I have to guard against is ramping myself up.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy. And I did it. I went back to work part-time in a couple of organizations, and, typical, they see you have a little bit of skill in something, and suddenly you're doing more and you're doing more and you're doing more. And then you're like, wait a minute, this wasn't where I started. And you've allowed yourself to be put into a position where the stress is becoming real again, the anxiety is becoming real again. Yeah. And you put yourself in that place.
Yeah.
So I've learned to guard against that. As you know, Haley, I'm well known for not answering phones and things such as that. And that's because, I'm gonna say, so there's not a whole lot of point picking up the phone and trying to pretend that we're having a conversation, because we're not. And it's those kinds of things. It's just learn what works for you and avoid the triggers.
Yes.
There's nothing difficult about it. It's much harder for people. I do have the luxury of living on my own and being able to make my own decisions. And I know it's so much harder when you're juggling kids and you're juggling partner. And in those cases, you just have to decide which balls can I put down.
Yeah.
And if
I think when you're in those situations, isn't it? Because the more you understand about yourself, and I found with me, the more I understood how I work and what triggers me, and the more I'm honest and share that with the people I'm with, this is where I am today. It's not a good day. It's this. I'm not focusing, or even when it's a semi day, I can walk in the kitchen and I go, right, yeah, I'm helping to cook, but I'm not with it. So someone else lead it. Just remind me if I haven't done something, or we go round and that's not just because of my head. We all have good and bad days, and the more honest I am, the more we see it in each other. And and through lockdown, there was a few of us here, like working at some stages, but there was a few of us. But we would all sort of see when someone was having a bad day and then we let them step back or help them, or see if they're not functioning properly and they're standing there not thinking great because they're just not having a good day or everything. And that's how we do it. We're very open. And I always used to say to Samuel, it's just like, if you're tired, when he was younger, tell me, because then I know what to say, how to say it, or what I'm expecting of you. If you don't say anything and then just scream at me, we then end up having an argument. So if and everyone should be like that. Like, you can come home from work and go, like, I'm really tired today. I'm not, okay, well, I need to step in and do a little bit more, because they're not in a good place. And when I'm not in a good place, they can rise up. And I think that's how it works within a household. But you really do have to learn to understand yourself and communicate, which is the biggest battle that doesn't always happen. And it's honesty, And
I think as well, Hayley, I think for many women, and I was one, there's a real tendency to want to be in control.
Yes.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with not being in control. And I think many women are a bit frightened by the concept of giving up control. And therefore, they try to overdo, they exhaust themselves, and then they blame their partner because they're tired.
Yes.
And instead, enable your partner, enable your child, enable whoever's in your support system to pick up some of the pieces, because you drop them all. You're not just going to drop a couple of pieces. If you push yourself too far, you will drop everything. And the other thing I think workplace politics, and again, for women, they're dreadful, because for some reason, women have been taught that they have to be better. And so in the workplace, I watch so many people whom I know, and they're putting in extra hours, and they're doing this and they're doing that. And I have done that myself, although in fairness, I used to be quite good at leaving work. And I have heard myself say to them, have you ever thought about having a conversation with your boss, because your job is clearly too big? And they're a bit shocked. And they said, well, I couldn't possibly do that because he'd think I'm not good enough at my job. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think your job is too big. If you're having to do this and you're capable. They chose you because you were capable.
Yeah.
And if you are not able to do it in the working day, there's a problem.
Yeah.
And it's not you. And I think too many folk, but especially women and minorities in the workplace, I think they suffer as well. They're always trying to prove themselves, because again, we're back to societal expectations, aren't we? But also our own perception Because frankly, you can take your foot off the gas and you still do a bloody good job.
Yeah.
But if you don't take your foot off the gas, you may no longer do the job.
Yeah.
And, you know, if the job that we're talking about, and I do think of parenting as a job, if that's the job that you're no longer able to do, you really screwed up. So
Yeah.
it's a matter, it's priorities, isn't it, Haley? And it's not wanting to be superwoman. And it's realizing that life is an opportunity to be filled with joy.
Yeah.
You know, this is not a dress rehearsal. We are here once.
Yeah.
And if we're spending all of it stressed out and worried and anxious, and what's the point?
It's not worth it, is it?
No.
It is meant to be fun. It is meant to be shared in a way. And I think when you're a parent, you have to realize you have to share the responsibility. And I've done a lot of the parenting on my own, but I still had to share that responsibility in the sense of I needed help from others. And Samuel needed to learn to take responsibility. Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean about sharing. And that's part of, I believe, teaching. And you don't have to do everything for your kids because they're capable. They are capable. And maybe for me, I learned that because I wasn't capable of doing everything, because if I did everything, I'd be ill. And I used to do that. So he had to take the role to mm-hmm. keep me well, mm-hmm. which I don't see as a bad thing because then he's independent, you know. Mm-hmm.
But also, again, and this is observation, Haley, so if I'm wrong, I apologize, but Samuel became very good at trusting other adults as well.
Yes.
You know, through his association with the Sea Cadets, he learned to trust other people. Through his association when he was just a young boy diving with fairly senior people, you know, a good 10 years older, and he learned to trust them.
Yeah.
And ironically, now he's so good, they trust him.
Yeah.
And I think this is, again, something that we really, as we live our lives, what do we really want people to think about as they interact with us? And it's trustworthiness, it's honesty, it's compassion, it's kindness.
Yeah.
And if you are allowing yourself to be pushed to a point that stress is taking those things away from you so that you're exhausted, miserable, angry, you're not a whole lot of good to the community you're around.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think we really do, as really privileged people who live in the West, have to dial it back and just say, in order to be a good member of my community, where should I be?
Yes, because it has a ripple effect, doesn't it? So how we act, you know, carries on.
Yeah.
And that's a good way, I think, to look in it, isn't it? That when we are trying to be, who are we? What do we really want? And how do I want to be? How happy do I want to be on a daily basis, or coping with stuff? You know, we've got to realize that ripple effect, because if we don't manage it, we don't help the people in our household, we don't help the community, we don't help the thing because of the ripple effect. And I think that's a nice sort of way to round this up and just feel that it's
that's how our mental health remains healthy.
Yes.
And you know, another thing, and I would encourage everybody to really think about, there should be no stigma about mental wellness.
Yeah.
It is something that everybody should be working towards, wellness, but some of us have illness. And those that do have illness, I really salute the people who find their way forward through it. You know, it's amazing the amount of money that's raised for, and I'm not knocking cancer because I have many people who I know dearly, love dearly, who deal with it, but the amount of money that's raised for cancer versus the amount of money that's raised for mental health.
Yeah.
Sad. Especially because our young people, the world is dialing up on our young people to an extent that we're going to see more people with breaks.
Yes. And they're breaking younger. They're breaking at university age.
Yep. Yeah. And it's because we're in the West, we're living in an unhealthy way. Yeah. And, you know, if I can say anything to anybody out there who's not feeling great, you know, it's okay. Just be you, and give yourself permission to not be okay.
Yeah.
And ask somebody you trust for some help, and just see how it works for you, because we're all different.
Yeah.
But it does not have to kill you. And I really want people to know that mental illness is a terminal illness, but it does not have to kill you.
No. Brilliant.
Love you.
Thank you for sharing. It's been really interesting talking to you today.
Oh, it always is, Hayley. It always is. So, and everybody who's out there, you're lucky to have this lady on your side.
Thank you. Yes, and we were talking about the other night as well. So doing some more chat, something about different things and things like that. So I think
if people, I'd love to see more responses on the page. I'd love to see people saying what they think, asking questions, because again, that's really helpful for everybody in the community. It seems like a very safe community.
Yeah.
And you know, the way that people who have experience, because there's nothing nice than being able to share experience. I mean, it's not a recipe for anybody to follow, but this is what works for me. And I think, you know, if there was a little bit more comment, don't be scared, don't be embarrassed. My God, you know, I'm just stood here and told a whole bunch of people I don't know that I tried to kill myself. But guess what? I'm a really good person.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it would be really helpful in the community that you're structuring for us, Hayley.
Brilliant. So, and I know you're going to be coming along and joining the community as well. Yeah. So I'm really excited about that as well. Yeah. So, and everybody knows you now, can see your face, so that's even better.
And my ghetto wallpaper, don't you love it? You see, things don't have to bother you. Brand new chair, ghetto wallpaper. Don't worry. Be happy.
I loved your picture of where you were taking the wall down and all the wires were, and because it wasn't going to get fixed for a while.
Oh, hang on.
Put your pictures up. This is what you call life does not need to be perfect. That is brilliant. I loved it.
Absolutely, you know, but the old me would have, the first electrician can do it, try another one, 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 until somebody comes, and then be exhausted.
Yeah.
Then what do? You just put a couple of paintings up. It's actually really cool, because with gyprock you can just bang nails in wherever you feel like. All right, Hayley.
Take care.
We'll be in touch soon. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you very much for welcoming me.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.